October 2006. It's interesting the moments we remember in life. And I remember walking into the cafe, and I was with T.S. Ramakrishnan and Matt Kohler, who are now, pretty well-known guys. They sat me down at the table and they said, "Today is your last day at Facebook." And I thought it was fake. I didn't think it was real. And it's kind of still crazy to me that 15 years later, one, I'm talking about it, and two, how much of an impact that moment changed my life. And I remember going back to the office, I saw Darian Shirazi, who went on to create Radius.com and other things, and he's like, "What happened?" I was like, "I got fired today." It was just like I didn't believe it, and I was so in shock and then embarrassed, and something that I just couldn't believe ever had happened to something. It's like literally like ripping something that mattered more than anything in my life away from me, and I feel like I had no control of it. And I remember I had to turn in my phone, and I went to the Verizon store to call my girlfriend at the time. Embarrassed, I told her. Bought a pack of Marlboro cigarettes. I was living with all Facebook people at a Facebook house in Palo Alto. Drove home in my CRX. Shout out CRX people. Got all my clothes because I was living in one of the bedrooms. Drove to my friend Johnny Lamb's house. And I lived on his couch for the next few weeks. And I remember being on the balcony that night that I got fired, smoking some Marlboro Reds. I don't know. Sorry, Mom. And people from Intel, where I used to work, would come up to me and were like, "Yo, man, so how's Facebook? I know you work there. Kind of cool. We've heard of it. How's it going with there?" And I was like, "Well, I got fired." And that's where the story starts. So I'm tired of sharing the story, man. It's just crazy that 15 years later, I was talking with a friend earlier of mine today, and it's amazing the different traumatic moments that have really defined our lives. What's interesting though is that people want to hear about it, and I think what's even more powerful than that is that all of us go through hard times. So I like sharing this story that, look, we're all gonna go through it, so maybe there's ways that we can deal with these kind of tougher situations better and make it easier for us to move forward with it. So I'm hoping that my story and the ways that I was able to approach it, not always perfectly, help you for whatever tough times you're having. If you're new here, my name is Noah Kagan. I am the founder of AppSumo.com, the #1 marketplace for entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur or a side hustler or have been wanting to start one, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Straight up, I was depressed for probably about 10 years. And not only was I depressed during this period, it was the time when Facebook was the most popular ever. Mark went on Oprah, Mark is on billboards, Mark is on magazines. So not only did I get rejected and kicked out and sad about this, it was in my face 24/7, and then they go public, and then these people become multi-billionaires. And so it was a challenging time to really get centered and feel good about myself during this overall experience. Now, what's important there is that when this happened to me, I had lost my girlfriend on this stuff. I lost the company. I'm back at my buddy's couch, and then I went and lived at my mom's house. So it's a trying time, but I think one of the specific things I did was focusing on the future. So what I did in that moment was I got a piece of paper, and I wrote down, what can I do in the next day? And then I said, well, what can I do in the next 30 days? And then I said, what can I do in the next 90 days, and the next year, and the next decade? And I just kind of filled in these buckets. And it was like, well, I'd like to make $1 million by 30. I'd like to have a house. I like to have a dog. I like to have a wife. And I remember distinctly, and that's really what shaped how I do my goals. If you've seen my other videos or heard me talk about it, I put it on my mirror. And it's a little embarrassing when you have your mom look at it or other friends look at it. And sometimes what we're excited to do or what we want to do with our life is a little bit embarrassing. But decide what you want for yourself. Create your own conviction. And I remember just looking at it every single day. And so for you, I'd highly recommend putting together at least a short and medium and long-term roadmap and really have some excitement about that. It makes some of the day-to-day kind of drollery or suckiness be like, dude, in 10 years, I could be at this other point. That is so wild. I can definitely do this for myself. And you could do that for yourself too. It's not unique to me. And I think that's one of the things why I share these stories is that there is a framework of how you can actually approach hard problems. And secondly, it's not a unique thing. I think it's a great chance for us to say, what kind of character do I have in myself? Am I a king? Am I a queen? And how would I behave in successfully moving forward from this crappy experience? Give yourself space and time to process what happened and be kind to yourself. So I was a wreck, man. I'm living on Johnny's couch. I ended up moving back into my mom's house. It's super embarrassing. Everyone publicly knew, at least in Silicon Valley, that I was a Facebook guy because I was blogging about it all the time. Now I felt really ashamed. One of the fortunate things is I had a really low cost of living, so I wasn't stressing to immediately have to go make money. But the key thing that I'd really want to remind myself of, and I wish I could go back in time, is Noah, it's gonna be okay. And that's tough because in that time you want to go and react. And you want to go kind of start doing some things. The reality was hey, you have probably about 100 more years to live, whatever that is, and you're gonna get through this. So let's be a little bit more patient on having to rush into the next thing, which is very common when something bad happens. But how we respond to them really defines who we are. The other thing I would say about giving yourself space and time is also just trying to really process what happened in that experience and say all right, well, generally when people get fired or a bad thing happens, sometimes people just really know, and it's more that it happened that they're just disappointed in. That ever happened to you where you get rejected but you didn't really like the person? So really process okay, well, what can I learn about this experience to keep getting better from it? Otherwise, you're gonna keep repeating that same mistake and you're not ever gonna really grow from it. So for myself with the Facebook experience, I think it was one, I wanted to run my own company. I didn't want to go work for Mark at the end of the day. 2, as the company grew from 30 people to 150 people, which I know sounds kind of crazy, I didn't want to be in meetings. I just left a 100,000 person company where I was in meetings all day. I wanted to be starting and promoting and moving really, really quickly, which the startup environment was actually going to be better for. I don't think I was as clear of really defining these takeaways so that I could be intentional in moving forward into my next part of the journey. And then lastly, with this giving yourself space, be kind to yourself. Even to this day, I am still the meanest person I know to me, and I'm guessing you are to you. So when something challenging happens, it doesn't mean you should excuse yourself like, hey, you just got fired because you messed up, good job. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like, hey man, you're a good person, you're gonna learn from this. Let's be a little nice, let's give a little huggy hug and be okay that like it's tough right now, but things will get better. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell below. We put out exclusive office hours just for subscribers and giveaways like I give away my Tesla. Next up that's important is that after you've kind of figured out where you want to go, you have to do things that build up your self-confidence. So for me, a few of the things that I did is I just went back to the things that I was really good at that I knew would make me feel good about myself. So I went back to blogging on okdort.com and I kept putting out posts and I saw there was comments and I'm responding to these comments, and that was a really great chance for me to actually be like, okay, I'm good at some things. The other thing is I went back to doing events. So communitynext.com and my conferences, I was like, man, I'm actually good at this. Because at this time when you are fired or you have a tough time, it's a lot of it is just like your self-identity and it's your self-worth. And so it's kind of being mindful about like, how do you start leaning into the things that you know are gonna make you feel good about yourself? So one of the key things is that if you get dumped or you lose your job or you want some change in your life, one of the first things everyone does is they go to the gym. And what's fascinating about that is like, what's really happening in that experience? And what's happening is that we want control over the success of our lives. And so going to the gym gives you a control that no one can take from you. You can totally decide how you want it to be. And it's a great way to start feeling better about yourself. So if it's not the gym, it could be journaling and say, hey, next 30 days I'm gonna go journaling. Maybe it's gonna be walking. Maybe it's gonna be just going and helping one other person. I know for myself, when I have felt imposter syndrome or I've not felt really good about myself, I'm like, let me just go help one other person and see how I feel. And literally 10 out of 10 times I'm like, I feel a lot better. And wow, I actually knew a few more things than I realized. So for yourself, just go and do one little thing, the smaller the better, that just you know is gonna make you feel good. Maybe it's even cooking, it doesn't matter. Just go do whatever it is to start building up that self-confidence and ultimately your self-worth. Don't be afraid to reach out to your friends for help. So for myself, I was living on Johnny's couch. 1, that was a friend. 2, I went out to a lot of the people that I was blogging or doing events with and was like, hey, what kind of projects are you working on? Is there anything you could help me with? So the way I was able to get the job at Mint.com was Dave McClure hit me up, said, hey, we're hiring for this position, can you refer anyone? So I referred my other buddy, he didn't want the job. And so then I was like, hey, I'd love to check this out. Checked it out and I was like, all right, this is it. And that is all because I asked my friends for help. And so what's important during this time period is 2 things. 1, take a stock of like who's really there for you when times are tough and when you really need someone. And if you don't have a strong network around that, that's really what you should be developing. Now, I think there's a tier 2 friend group, your acquaintances, that in your professional network, how do you start expanding that network through blogging, through events, through helping different people, through being a part of communities, maybe like the Underdog community, okdort.com/underdogs, where as you face a tough time, like I know someone named Dan, who's in the Underdogs group, was facing a tough time, he had a support system of acquaintances who were there to help him be successful. Now, when you're going through tough times, realize you don't have to be alone through it. And a lot of people out there, including myself, want to see you succeed and want to help you. So don't feel like you have to just all be alone with it. Put yourself out there, go to your core group, build up your acquaintance group, and realize that people want to see you do well. Write about your experience or talk about it on YouTube 15 years later. Just kidding. Do it either publicly or privately. Write about your experience. So for me, I put out a story called The Facebook Book, and it's on Amazon. It's about how I lost $170 million. I also blogged about it on okdort.com, which went viral, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It was just a chance for me to really reflect on the experience. So what drove me to write it was just to really have my own form of therapy. It wasn't to sell a bunch of copies or get people feeling sad for me, but it was just like, hey, this is a way that I can share a story that I think would be interesting for others and help others go through an experience like that and help make it not feel so much pressure inside of me. Did it help me get over it? No. I was still angry and bitter about it. And after I put the book out and after the post went viral about it, I felt like I had a scarlet letter on my chest. It was that I was rejected and I had failure in a really public setting because a lot of people at that time knew I worked at Facebook. But it also, one of the things that was interesting is it provided a chance for other people to feel close to me. And I do think it connected a lot of people who were like, hey, I've been fired before. Or it sounds like, oh wow, you've gone through some tough times too, Noah. Me too. And it's actually helped me really develop some really interesting and awesome relationships with people. So what does it really mean for you as a takeaway is that not that you have to go and put an article out there and not that you have to boo-hoo yourself, because like that no one wants to come to a pity party at the end of the day. But it's like, hey, publicly or privately, let me really just document what I'm really learning about this experience. If you feel like comfortable sharing it, I think that's awesome. Because a lot of these times you feel like it's really unique, you feel like it's really alone. And the reality is it's not. And putting it out there is also just a way to like put it out there, set it free, and then be able to move on to the next thing. So who cares whether it's journaling or blogging or books or anything like that? That's not really the point. It's just kind of getting it out of your head, getting on paper, and then being like, all right, now I am free from that story. I'm free from that narrative. What's the next chapter I want to be writing in my life? You know, for me, with writing that book as well, it was like, who is the enemy in this hero's journey? So if you don't know Joseph Campbell, he talked about the hero's journey. It's what Star Wars is based on, is that as you go through a journey in life, like you face some big challenge, and all of us are going to be challenged in some capacity, relationship, professional, and then we need help and support. But the idea is that you come back, you defeat your enemy and your fears, and you become a better person, and you are a hero in the story. So thank your enemy for giving you a chance to be your own hero. So thank you, Mark and Facebook, for doing that. I'm not saying that it made it easier for me to succeed in life. It definitely inspired me to go a lot further. And so when I found Mint.com, it definitely drove the shit out of me to be like, yo, I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna make this super successful. I'm gonna prove all these people wrong. Take this like negativity, frankly, and this energy and use that actually as a power with a chip on your shoulder to really drive you to be successful. So what does that mean for me? Honestly, for probably 15 years, give or take, this chip on my shoulder that these elitists, these Harvardists, these Silicon Valley venture capitalists, these funded people, they don't think I'm good enough. They don't think I'm successful enough. They doubt that I could be a CEO. They doubt that I could ever do it. That chip on my shoulder really kept driving me in my 20s. It kept driving me to start more companies and try new businesses till eventually I was able to really not trying to satisfy or say F you to them, but I was really able to do what I really wanted for myself. I do think finding some motivation for yourself, whether it is a chip on your shoulder for people doubting you, maybe something in your family, or something to drive you in a positive format. And I do think what happens though, that I've noticed in my own experience, is that I use the negativity to finally get money, to finally have validation, to finally prove myself. And at some point you're like, all right, who am I trying to prove this to anymore? And now it's stepping forward to be like, all right, well, what's my next motivating factor? So for me now, it's love. Oh, I wish we could have sparkles come on the camera. But really, it's that. It's like, all right, I don't need to tell Facebook or care about any of them anymore. I don't need to have that chip on my shoulder. But now what's motivating me is the excitement of like working in a team at AppSumo.com, developing my leadership skills, creating content that now is helping other people who feel doubted. Maybe it's you that's out there that feels like you have the potential or you have the ability, but you don't have the support. It's like, yo, guess what? I'm on your back, helping you make sure that you can accomplish things that you want to accomplish. If you like this video and you want to hear the full story of why I got fired from Facebook, check out this video right up here. And if you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for, homie? Go do it. I love you, and I'll see you out there.